Well, good day, everybody. Welcome to the Lifetime Talks Training Podcast. And today we have the one and only Miss PhD Dr. Ashley Lucas. And she holds a PhD in sports nutrition and chronic disease and is also a registered dietitian. And today, really we're going to focus on her specialty in working with people who have failed over and over again in trying to get their weight loss right and get their health right and really want long-term success. She has a very unique story on how she got into this, and we'll let her talk about that and really 15 years of researching and diving into this method to be able to really focus on metabolic wellness, inflammation reduction, and overall, most importantly, what we're going to talk about today, the behavior and emotional support that's needed to transform yourself for the long term. So welcome to the show, Miss Dr. Ashley Lucas.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
No problem. Well, I would love to jump in and start. I mean, you talk about having a different perspective on weight loss and really seeing it as kind of this addiction recovery process. And I'd love for you to kind of dive into that, through your story and then kind of what brought you to, finding out that really a lot of this is this, I know people don't like talking about it, but this addiction and recovery process.
Yeah, I can start a little bit with a background on my story, and then we can get into that aspect. But I spent my youth training in classical ballet, and I started when I was real young, and I wasn't naturally very talented. And so I had to force my body to do a lot of things that it shouldn't have been able to do. And as a result of it, I was injured all the time. I had a fairly successful career despite not being that naturally talented, but it's just because I forced my body to do these things. And I had probably performed in 600 nutcrackers,
Wow.
at least half of them with one or two stress fractures. And, I was told that I was fat countless times,
Oh my God.
despite, like most ballet dancers probably. And I restricted myself from a dietary aspect so that I could try to maintain a lean weight, but I was rarely there. And when I was injured.
Mhm.
And so I kept up with that. I didn't, eat any kind of fat because I thought that fat would make me get fat. I avoided red meat like crazy, and I still wasn't where I needed to be. And so, the accumulation of my professional dancing career, and I danced with companies all over the country, was when I was chosen to perform in New York. And that's every dancer's dream.
For sure. Congrats too.
Yeah, well, thank you. I didn't actually do it.
Oh.
I got there, and instead of finding myself on stage in these once in a lifetime performances, I landed in the ER.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was having a heart attack, something terrible. And so I had a whole bunch of tests done, and the neurologist came back and said that I was simply over exercised and underfed,
Wow.
and that my body couldn't do it anymore. That was it.
Was it like a rhabdo type of thing or
No,
no?
I just think it was basically panic attack, and my body just physically couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah, it's such those are such great things. I mean, but ballet and gymnasts. I mean, you
Mhm.
could say the same thing about football, but they're sometimes the stuff that you take yourself through and your body through later on, really, I mean, takes a bit of a toll if you don't catch it early enough. So great that you
Yeah.
did. Unfortunately, it impacted your career. So what happened from there?
Well, so I was flown back home. I was fearful of my health future because I still didn't really know what was going on. I thought maybe multiple sclerosis or something like
Mhm.
that. It was really odd symptoms when my body just can't handle a stress load physically and emotionally. And so I was flown back. I couldn't continue. For me, it was a huge deal because it was 20 plus years of struggle and sacrifice and my adolescence. I mean, I didn't know who I was. It was my identity. Like any major athlete, it's all that we are and all that we think and breathe. And so I was pretty depressed and had a lot of anxiety wrapped around what I should do because it was really this quick situation where I didn't plan for that to happen. I thought this was like the beginning of big time. And so I had to think about what to go into next. And I just understood how significantly nutrition, or really lack thereof, impacted my own sport performance. So I went on and pursued sports nutrition. And so I went to Virginia Tech, and I had an amazing advisor who understood everything that I was going through and that I really wanted to help others avoid what I did. You know, I was a chronic dieter, and we know that metabolically that hinders us. That, you know, quote unquote, ruins the metabolism. And so I really wanted to study us and what happens to our bodies and what can we do to achieve an optimal body composition, but not totally depress our metabolic rate at the same time. And then most importantly, what do we need behaviorally and emotionally and mentally to support big positive change? And so I went on and earned my PhD in exactly that. And so that's kind of where my passion for this all started.
See, our audience is a bit of trainer and then high-end health enthusiast. And I've always said, you know, the path and the scope, right or wrong, of what we work with, whether you're an RD nutrition coach, you know, in trainer, is at the end of the day, there's the weight loss aspect of it. There's the cardio and the strength. The plan doesn't mean anything if they don't do it. and how you get people to do it is behavior modification and understanding some of the things that, you know, I know you're going to go into. And so, you know, you talk and you use the term, you know, that it's not our fault. Mm-hmm. And that, you know, dealing with emotions and dealing with behavior is an addiction, whether you have a negative association to that or not. Let that pass. That negative association needs to go away and just let it be. So how did you come up with this, and why do you say that it's not our fault?
Well, so, you know, after I earned my PhD, I guess I figured that wasn't enough education. And then so I went and I taught at the Ohio State University for a while, but there I learned that I had this true passion on seeing dramatic change within individuals. Like the research is so important, and I really enjoy that. I'm really glad I have the background in that, so I can read and stay up to date with literature and really decide what the best approach is for our clients and for our family. Because, you know, nutrition research is so poorly done in general. You can find anything out there to support whatever your beliefs might be when it comes to nutrition and training, really, right?
Yeah, that could be another episode too.
It could be. So I went back to school so I could be this true expert in weight management and behavior change. And I became a registered dietitian. But during that period, there was an issue because all the information I was being taught was the same conventional wisdom that I know doesn't work for me. And, you know, that wisdom of it's all about calories in and out. You need to have more willpower, more discipline. You just need to eat everything in moderation. And I did that. And I knew that it didn't work for me. So I took everything I learned about metabolism and behavior change in my PhD work and flipped everything that I learned about nutrition upside down and started to work one-on-one with athletes. And what I found had this significant impact on athletes, allowing them to drop body fat, but support their metabolism, allowed them to perform at higher intensities for longer duration, actually had an even more profound impact on those of us struggling with excess weight. And so that's kind of slowly how I adopted and created and implemented what we call the PhD approach in our clients, where we really look at metabolically what's going on and how to support successful and healthy weight loss, but also the mental and emotional, the habits and behaviors. And so that's slowly how we incorporated that. And over time, I've just realized that this is largely an addiction recovery process for the majority of us. Yep. And it's okay. It's nothing to be shameful or guilty of. It's just how we're wired. And also the environment that we're living in right now is so conducive to us and instant gratification and the foods. We could go into all the reasons why we might be addicted to food, but it's multifactorial.
Yeah. And it's so powerful, you know, and like any mindfulness practice or anything, the first step is awareness, like just acceptance and awareness and being aware that, am I really hungry? And so if we can, I've got a question for you that, you know, if we can, and it's too much, let me know, but I'm looking at, like, how does somebody read something? Because you said there's so much out there that you can always find something that says this is right or that's right. Is there anything that you can give the audience that you have just a couple of things to say, well, this is probably what you should look at for it to be kind of really justifiable. And you can say, yeah, this is
Mhm.
probably inaccurate versus not.
It's just so hard
It is.
if you don't come from a science background to pull that out. I'd say go listen to Peter Attia and the Eating Academy
Yeah. Yeah.
because he pulls everything out and he can express it in a way that a lot of us can understand.
Got it.
But just looking at, one is where are the studies being sponsored and who's paying for the study? If it's like the
Yeah.
dairy industry paying for something, looking at if dairy is healthy or not, then we should maybe kind of consider where that's coming from.
Got it.
The duration of the study, a lot of nutrition studies are based on food frequency questionnaires.
Yeah.
And that will say, okay, over the last 10 years, how often do you eat X food? I mean, if you put me on the spot right now and ask me what I ate yesterday, I don't think I could remember.
Yeah.
How often do we remember what we ate a week ago? Nonetheless, 5 years ago.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I ate a hot dog.
Yeah.
And then with a lot of the nutrition studies, we lump fast food or red meat in with fast food. And is it really the red meat that's the culprit, or perhaps the white bread, bun, and French fries and Coke that's eaten in conjunction with it? So
Yeah.
I know, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, that's good. I mean, it is a monstrous question, and
Yeah.
I didn't expect, but again, find the right people, a couple little things to try to dive into so that, but the problem is usually people go after looking for a reason why they're taking something to justify it. And so they end up justifying the bullshit.
Yeah. I know.
So, all right, let's jump back in. So, you mentioned it's not our fault, this kind of yo-yo experience phenomena. Would you mind describing what that is and kind of tying into that, obviously, this importance of understanding the emotional and kind of, stress-related stuff that impacts how we're eating?
Sure. Well, so there's many reasons why we might be addicted or really strongly driven to certain foods. And one of them is metabolically and hormonally. So what happens in our lives is we have these triggers and they change the way that we tolerate our food. And a common trigger for men might be, general aging. It could be some major lifestyle change or a stressful relationship situation. For women, I commonly see pregnancy or menopause, one of those life stage hormonal shifts. For some people, the trigger could be birth. And these are people genetically predispositioned to store fat really well. So we go through our lives and we're able to eat a certain way. We have this trigger and we eat the same way we have been, but now it's resulting in weight gain instead. And we're thinking, what the heck is going on? I haven't changed anything significant, but I'm putting on this fat, and this fat, oh my gosh, is going in the belly. Yeah. And so what happens is after we have these shifts, our body tolerates food in a different way. We start to accumulate the fat in the belly, and this belly fat is called visceral fat, right? And it's this unique fat. It's different than the fat throughout the rest of the body. It's thick like a gel. It fills up the organs and it wraps around them and squeezes our organs internally very tightly. If we took, a slice of your liver, if you carry belly fat, it would look like a Kobe beefsteak. Wow. Like that marbling that in that ribeye steak. That's what I'm talking about when I reference visceral fat. And this visceral fat, after it's been in there for a while, it grows its own blood vessels. It gets a little oxygen supply, and these fat cells secrete hormones. So I want you to imagine that this belly fat, it's like this tumor, and all it wants to do, it has its own objective, and all it wants to do is get fatter as fast as possible.
And like a tumor. She didn't say it was a tumor. It was like a tumor.
Like a tumor that just wants to grow. It has similar behaviors.
Yeah.
So, for example, it secretes hormones that make you hungry, that make you not really feel full. You have cravings. You're addicted to these foods. This fat is hungry.
And those hormones are what? Would you
They
mind?
play with leptin and
Leptin
ghrelin.
and ghrelin.
They
Yes, exactly.
secrete
Okay.
aromatase, which converts for men their testosterone into estrogen. So now they have lower T and higher estrogen. Does the same thing in us women, and it increases our risk of breast cancer significantly because of the aromatase converting into estrogen in the breast tissue. It secretes interleukin 6, which is a major inflammatory hormone, which is why we have increased risk of, say, heart disease and cardiovascular disease when we carry more belly fat.
Yeah.
And it also secretes cortisol at the tissue level of the cell, which we know, if we're in a high insulin state, encourages more fat storage. So with all of those hormones in the mix, and I'm sure I'm missing some, we have these situations where we find ourselves hungry, where we find ourselves craving, our metabolism is slowed, so we can like legit look at, I don't know, burger and fries and put on some weight when it shouldn't be that way. And it makes us lazy. It makes us not want to move. The last thing this fat mass wants to do is expend energy. It just wants to grow. And so, as long as we have this hungry fat mass in there, we're going to be driven to potentially eat more, eat the foods we know we shouldn't be eating. And then when we do eat, it's going to store it and pile it in to become more fat rather than going to our muscles and allow us to feel like we want to move.
Yeah. It's, I'm pausing because it's so powerful, everything that you just said, and it's so common. And, it's angry. It angers me because sometimes through social media we see all these people say, "Oh, it's just calories in and calories out," and
Yeah.
and it might be for the very healthy person. They're already healthy. They don't have many hormone imbalances. They're younger, but as we age, it's you see it more and more being less about the calories in and out because of what what you just described. So that was very, very powerful.
Yeah, we had a dancer, a young dancer, work with us, and she had taken something for acne, Accutane, or I think, and it just really put a lot of stress on her liver. And 22 years old, and had always been very, very lean and put on 30 pounds. And so when I chatted with her, she was eating literally 600 calories a day,
Man.
sleeping a lot because she was so fatigued. And when she was awake, she was exercising, or at least walking and Pilates and yoga, and then would get on the bike and lift weights. And we actually had got her eating more, sleeping a little less. I
Yeah.
mean, about 8 hours. It was like 12 hours, and moving significantly less, but more smart.
Yeah.
And she was able to drop 30 pounds and is back at her performing
That's
weight.
great.
So,
And,
yeah.
and what's awesome now too is there's so much technology out that can help people quantify the stress that they're under.
That's
And things like HRV, heart rate variability, and I use the Whoop. Actually, I should have it on.
Yes.
I usually always have it on. I
I've
took
seen
it
it
off before
on it.
when I jumped in the shower, but like things like that, because so many people, you can give them that advice, but they don't get it. But yet,
You're
certain pieces of equipment don't lie. Like,
Yeah,
your
the
blood
Oura
doesn't lie.
ring,
Yeah.
that's helpful. You can look at,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Or,
like
yep.
the Oura ring. Those are great.
Yeah, perfect. Well, so getting into it now is, you mentioned it's a bit, there's metabolic side of it, there's the behavioral side of it. So, your holistic approach to weight loss behavioral therapy, kind of essential. So talk me through kind of, what steps, if you're finding yourself, you're one of these people out there that, you think you're doing everything right, but you're still not getting where you need to be. Kind of, what are the steps? Like, and I know you've got an ebook, and we'll dive into that a little bit later. But what can you give us to kind of start to identify? Okay, maybe I need to start looking at this a different way.
Yeah, I think awareness as to if you're struggling in this way. So specifically, if we stuck to food addiction, usually we're addicted to sugar and carbs. It's just, we know from research, if we look at individuals who consume higher levels of sugar, the same areas of the brain are lit up under MRI as to those individuals who are taking cocaine. I think in the 1800s, we consumed about 18 pounds of sugar a year, and now we're at 180 pounds of sugar per person per year.
That's
So
crazy.
it's like a 600% increase over 20 years. I've never in
Really?
my clinical experience heard someone say, I'm addicted to steak and I just can't stop eating it. So I think it's having awareness of like, what foods are you going to?
Yeah.
And sugars and carbs, not saying that they're evil or that you can't eat them, not saying that at all. They're important and they have their roles, but it's recognizing if you're eating above the tolerance level of it,
Yep.
and so those can be seen in oatmeal or even fruit. I'll have people say, I'm not sugar addicted, but they're eating so much fruit through the day. And when we remove that or significantly reduce that, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm having major sugar cravings right now.
Yep.
And that's coming from those foods. So I think awareness, like you said, is the first step. If you're experiencing weight gain and bloating and it just doesn't make sense, poor sleep, headache, you can look at the behavioral side. If you're hiding the foods that you're eating or not eating it with a group of people, that's a sign that there's a behavior there that needs to be changed.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of clients I work with, they get up in the middle of the night to eat, or, they're driving around and they stop at a gas station and buy all the sugary foods and can't stop eating it. So I'd say that those are signs that you might have some kind of sugar addiction. Or if you don't feel you have a food addiction, but you simply cannot drop weight despite exercising more and eating less, that means there's something off, and someone from the outside should help you and take a look at what's going on from an outside perspective, because it might be something very simple you haven't been able to think of that can be tweaked.
What's interesting too, because I see a lot of people say, oh, well, it's organic. And
Right.
so I'm okay. And what do you say? I mean, it's organic, but it's still a carb, or it's still sugar.
Yeah. Or they're like, well, for breakfast, I have steel cut oats. Like
Yeah.
they're a different, unfortunately, it's oatmeal, which is converted into glucose and raises your insulin.
Yeah.
So it is like, it doesn't matter, unfortunately, if it's organic or steel cut, the body doesn't care. Of course, now a piece of fruit's going to be better than gummy bears because the fruit has fiber and like a multivitamin backpack to it, where the gummy bear doesn't. But the sugar response is they're going to be similar in there. And so that could be part of the struggle.
Got it. What about strategies? Anything, somebody's addicted to sugar and they're trying to get through it. Is there any strategies, supplementation, foods, that you would recommend to help beat that?
Sure. Let's talk about a few behavioral tactics, and then let's talk about the nutrition side.
Got it.
If that's okay.
Yep.
So from a behavioral aspect, usually dinner time is the most challenging time for us to make wise decisions because we are so fatigued. So coming up with a plan and then working the plan.
Yeah. It's crazy how easy the plan is in the morning, every morning,
I know.
Especially on Mondays.
Yeah, I've got this. That's right. Monday through Wednesday, we kind of get it. And then we're like, screw this. I'm ready for a year. So yeah, just making the decisions, or I guess the choices that you want, the easiest decision is going to be key. So like if it's a goal for you to go walk after work, putting your tennis shoes in the driver's seat of your car, so they're right there, rather than you having to go home and then find the shoes, but then your kids are there and you get distracted and you say, what the heck, I'm just going to eat goldfish with them instead of going on a walk. So just having that is going to be important. Then there's this acronym HALT, and it's to help you recognize your triggers. So H is for hungry, A is for angry, L is for lonely, and T is for tired. And these are just 4 areas where they are high trigger points for a lot of people. And to recognize, oh my gosh, I'm hungry. Let me make sure I have a tactic in place as to what to do when I'm hungry. So you come up with these tactics, not when you're in one of these states. Like you're peaceful, you're calm, you're rested. It's Monday morning. And you come up like, hey, when I'm hungry, this is what I'm going to do. When I'm angry, I'm going to be aware that, I usually eat X, and here's what I'm going to do instead that's not related to food. you have to fill whatever action you had in the past with a new action. You can't just leave a void, because we know nature abhors a void or a vacuum.
Yeah.
We got to fill it with something
Got it.
else. So from a behavioral side of things, that's going to be helpful.
What is your thought? I'm a big believer in, just through working with people for years and years and years, just I'm more on the training side, but as if they don't spend time really vividly thinking about it, exactly what it is that they want, and having that vivid picture without a nutritionist or an RD or a trainer projecting what they think they should be, right? There's a big,
Right.
huge difference between what you think they can and should be versus what they want. And when you
Mhm.
have that vivid picture, I believe that it really helps change the behavior or catch yourself when a bad behavior might be brewing.
It's huge. Yeah. So I think what you're saying in summary is to kind of create this identity
Yep.
of what they want to be, whatever that is, unique to them. If
Mm-hmm.
it's fit and sexy or whatever,
Yep. Yep.
muscular and
Yep.
vibrant,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
then living within that identity as if they're already there,
Exactly.
right?
Yep. Yep.
So, what would you have in your pantry if you were, this fit, lean, muscular guy? Would you have Triscuits in there, or would you, have some
Yeah.
beef jerky?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that that's spot on. And then having
Right.
this resounding why that's larger than yourself
Yep.
to keep you on course, because there's going to be challenges. I think it's recognizing that there's discomfort with any kind of up leveling and change. And in today's society, we hate discomfort.
Yep.
This weekend, I did this workshop where we had to sit in an ice bath for 2 minutes.
Love it.
Yeah, and the guy who was helping was like, "You're safe, you're fine. It is just discomfort."
Yeah.
And so I think we can't go into these periods of change thinking that it's just going to be all like Pollyanna.
Yeah. Well, like the quote is always, nothing good comes easy.
Yeah,
It
that's so
doesn't. And
true.
I wish so much that we would, even in school, teach kids to fail fast, obviously, and use it as a learning experience to move forward, as opposed to how we harbor these things and just make it so much more difficult for us later in life.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So what about, any, either foods, supplementation, there's apple cider
Sure.
vinegar, people talk about different things, like just anything that you have, from that perspective to help, kind of work with those people that are struggling with those carb
Yeah.
cravings.
So, a lot of the reason why we have cravings is because our body might be really wanting a dopamine surge. I mean, it's why we smoke or drink or do all these different things to change our state. And so there are other areas in life that we can increase dopamine, and this is through exercise, getting out in nature, specifically in the morning to set your circadian rhythm. And it shows that when we get out in nature, it increases dopamine and serotonin.
Beautiful.
Walking is like the number one thing we can do for our brain health and our bodies. Connection and building really strong relationships is huge to increase resiliency, and even shows us secreting those feel good neurotransmitters. So getting outside with a friend and talking,
Yeah.
getting out in the sun, meditation, intention setting, journaling, like all of these things are going to be really important from a behavioral side.
Got it.
From a nutritional aspect, when we might reduce our carbs to break the ties with these foods we say we love that aren't loving us back, we don't want to just restrict overall calories, because then we're going to be really hungry and we're going to be at risk of shutting down our metabolism, so to speak. And so if we're going to reduce the carbohydrate portion and sugar portion in our diet, we have to increase our dietary fat and proteins. Protein is a little tricky. I know your audience probably knows this, but it has a rate limiting amount, right? You can only eat so much protein before it's going to be stored as fat as well. So you want to get the right amount of protein to help you feel full and support your muscle mass. And then that dietary fat, usually we fear fat, which we really don't want to do. We need to get plenty of fat. So I always tell our clients when they're craving something, they need more fat. If they have a craving, they've knocked themselves out of fat burn intentionally or unintentionally, and they need to eat more fat to get them back into that state where they're burning it and feeling good.
Got
If
it.
you're eating the right way for your body, you shouldn't have cravings. You shouldn't have hunger. You shouldn't have to white knuckle. If you're white knuckling it, something is wrong with your nutrition and it can be fixed.
When you say eat right for your body, is there a specific way that you recommend? I know there it could be elaborate, but what are
Yeah.
you using to identify that?
We really look at all the different aspects of each person, their training schedule, how their stress level, their health background. If they have type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, for example, it's going to be a different picture than someone who's working out all the time and still has weight to drop.
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult for me to say for just a wide range
Yeah.
of what the ideal way of eating, but I find more of a Mediterranean kind of paleo based way of eating, not eating things out of a box, reducing carbs. We really don't need a lot of them, but you don't have to be keto. You don't have to be Atkins. But if you can drop those carbs, get your protein up so you're eating, at least 20 grams of protein at every meal and snack. But again, that's going to be different for each person.
Yeah.
And then filling in the dietary fat. So you're still dropping weight if that's the goal, but you're not hungry. Those are kind of how we pull the different levers.
Got it. Got it. And when you say the fats, is there, can you give some suggestions around what the right
Yeah.
oils and or fats are that, people should be including and then at the same time, which ones should they be taking out?
Yeah, so we want those higher omega-3 fatty acids, which of course would be eating a little bit more fish in the diet. If you can, more grass-fed meats and pasture-raised eggs. But from just the fat source, it would be, more monounsaturated fat, like extra virgin, first cold pressed olive oil is going to be a great thing. My favorite oil that I cook with is avocado oil because it has a really high smoke point, which means that you can cook with it at a very high temperature
Got it.
before it smokes and goes rancid.
Got it. Got it.
Coconut oil, some people like. If you can tolerate saturated fat, that's a great stable fat that you can cook with. In my spray oil, if I use spray, it might be avocado oil or coconut oil, but I wouldn't use olive oil at a high heat because it's not that stable.
Got it.
So those are the best fats. The fats we want to avoid are the vegetable oils, including canola oil, because it's really not shelf and high heat stable. A lot of these vegetable oils are so processed, they're rancid by the time we get it, and they increase inflammation. So dropping those type of oils, peanut oil, not really the best if you can't avoid it.
Got it. Awesome. Well, with regards to going back, is there, or are you hesitant in just kind of, if we could speak generally speaking around certain supplements, if any, that can assist, you mentioned estrogen aromatase, and I know people that take DIM and things like that. Anything that you can give, just as, again, we're not telling you to go out and do it, that it's going to, impact you this way, but studies have shown that, these things might have a positive impact.
Sure. So when you're eating a really nutrient dense diet, the majority of us don't need to take a ton of supplements. We know that we respond differently depending on our genetics to certain supplementation. So I think that's a really interesting area that's up and coming where we can study our body and our genetics and figure out what supplements we really need to take. From a blood glucose, insulin sensitivity standpoint, berberine is helpful to take. Maybe 600 milligrams a day for some people, and that helps to drop glucose levels. Let's see, not from a hormonal situation, like you said, DIM can be helpful. There's a whole bunch of different adrenal support, energy cortex supplements that one could take, but I don't think it's necessary unless you've really been diagnosed with adrenal fatigue to support that. Thyroid is a huge deal. If your thyroid is off, then you're going to find that your estrogen levels are off. Testosterone will be lower. So getting the right test for thyroid function is going to be really important. The
Got it.
majority of us are pretty deficient in vitamin D. So taking vitamin D3 with vitamin K to help absorption, I'd say we all should be taking, specifically in the winter, because we only absorb vitamin D through the months of May through October, and from the hours of 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So if we're working and we get out in the sun, and at 3 we're not even making the appropriate levels of vitamin D.
Got it. Awesome. Well, let's jump back into kind of that behavioral side and the weight loss questions to consider. I know that you've got some things, and I don't think we've hit on that quite yet. Would you mind talking about that?
Yeah, so from the behavioral component associated with dropping weight, well, I mean, when we look at it, it's having this really strong desire, right? Your desire to change has to significantly outweigh your desire to stay the same, or nothing's going to change. It's just like anything else in life. I'd say 80% of dropping weight and maintaining it comes from the mind. So no matter what you are doing, it's more important, I'd say, to how you're fueling your mind from the messages and what you're thinking, and the words that you choose are going to impact your body just as much as what you're fueling it through food and your diet. So using those words like, I choose to eat this food today over the French fries because I choose to feel great about myself, and fitting in these clothes or doing this with this person is more important than the stupid French fries.
It's so powerful what you said there too, because it's the attachment, that we're built in, not only what you had mentioned about just the cells and the addiction that occurs through what the cells want to feed on, but mentally, obviously, we want to stay attached. We want to be comfortable, and all these other things of eating things that we don't potentially like, or, getting up and moving. Those are things that take us out of that comfort. And it's just ironic and powerful at the same time that, what we need to do the most are the things that our bodies kind of are almost ingrained in not wanting us to do.
Yeah, I think that's the same as anything in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really just about the stories that we're telling ourselves. I was working with a client last week, and he was about 8 pounds away from where he really needed to be to fully collapse this fat mass. So, so one thing, as I take a tangent, is this fat mass, if we don't get the body where it needs to be, and let's say we have 60 pounds of excess fat weight on our frame and we only drop 30 pounds of it, well, you're going to regain. You're going to be at a 98% of regain there. Because if we think of this hungry fat mass like a tumor, it's not, but we think of it like that, and we only drop half of it, it's analogous to shaving the top off of a weed and leaving the root, and it will come back. And so a large reason why we experience the yo-yo phenomenon is because we don't get the body truly where it needs to be. We choose to drop some amount of ambiguous weight where we think we'll look and feel good enough, which I would say is the biggest reason for weight loss failure. We leave the root in there, and then, oh my gosh, it's comes back before we know it with a flower on top next time. So one thing that's really important is, if you are helping someone or you are dropping weight, you need to get the body back to its sweet spot. So you're no longer fighting against this thing that just wants to grow. So I was helping my client the other week, realizing, that he really needed to collapse the full 60 pounds. He was 8 pounds away. And he was like, no matter what, I'm doing everything precisely. I'm not dropping this weight. And he kept saying, I'm not dropping this weight. I don't think it's ever going to happen. And so I asked him if he could visualize that target, like what it looked like, what it felt like with all of his senses. Could he imagine it? And he couldn't picture it. And not only could he not picture it in a positive way, but he had a negative connotation associated with that. Well, that's like training an athlete, and maybe an Olympic level downhill skier, and they picture themselves crashing every time they do it in their mind. But instead, we see these athletes up at the top with music, getting them into peak state, visualizing, moving their body as if they did that run perfectly. And that's what we've got to do, is we've got to be able to see it and feel it and believe it with our whole heart and our whole mind, or it's not going to happen. And we worked on that, and his work to be done was not even to focus on his nutrition, but to visualize and imagine and put some positive connotation on that. And that next week, he came in and he had dropped 6 pounds and
That's
was ready to hit.
fantastic.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I'm actually, self-analyzing as we as we go through this, because I keep telling I'm high 40s and I'm okay with this 4-pack that dissolves into nothing. And I'm like, am I saying that because I just don't want to give up the pizza and some of the things that I really want? So, but I want to talk about that. And if you wouldn't mind, is, obviously I think some people, when they hear us talk or people talk about things like this, they go to the extremes, right? So it's either you can't do any of this and you have to do all of this, and it's such a far gap between where people are at. I'd love for you to talk about your stance in how you work with people regarding cheat meals and that kind of aspect. Do you have anything? Are you like, no way, for a period of time and then we can reintroduce, or anything that you can suggest there or talk about?
Yeah, I don't like to use the word cheat because then that makes us feel like full of shame
Yeah.
and guilt. We're like, I cheat. I mean, cheated is not really a good word to use. So
True.
I say there's no cheats.
Yeah.
And I say that because you choose. No one's telling you you can't eat that or you can't eat that. This is totally your choice. And we're guiding you in the direction you want to go.
Mhm.
And so we're going to guide you in that and be like, these are the foods you want. These are the foods that aren't getting you where you want. But if you choose one day or whatever, multiple days to eat that food, then that's okay. You're just not eating within your lifestyle. And you can do that once in a while. But I wouldn't save like a Sunday to do that. Like, do it on a whim. If you're out with your kids and they're having ice cream and you, for some reason, really, really want it, you think it's going to elevate that experience, then you freaking eat the ice cream, but then you move on and you don't feel guilty about it. You didn't cheat. You don't feel shameful. You just had a freaking scoop of ice cream and you're moving on back into the lifestyle that gets you the body and the mind and the wellness that you really want and you deserve to have. So I know that might be boring.
It's perfect, because I think also what you're saying, but you didn't say, is that the agonizing and the mental anguish that you put yourself under for thinking about it and not doing it, and or doing it and then not letting it go, is probably worse than the actual meal that you just had in front of you.
Right. Yeah. And planning to just, I don't know, push yourself totally off. And then all the work and the stress that the body goes through when you do have big cheat days, and then to get back on track. I mean, it's just a lot of effort.
Yeah. So one other thing, and then I want to dive into your book. I've heard this, and it could be a very simple yes or no. I've heard that obviously our bodies have a set point weight. And somebody had told me, a pretty prominent guy, that when you're dieting, once you get to a certain weight, whatever that weight is that you're looking for, that your chances of staying at that weight, if you can stay there for, I want to say it was about a 5 to 8 day period, within 2 pounds of that weight. And that means in the morning, at night, no matter what you eat, it's within around 2 points, or 2 pounds. That if you stay there for a period of time, and you can do that, that your body can reset to that lower, or whatever that set point is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't heard that before. And you said about 3 to 5 days.
I want to say it was
8
5 to, I think it was 5 to 7, somewhere in that range. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I just know from our experience that if we can, and when we get the body into its sweet spot where it's not struggling against this body fat percentage that's above our zone for our unique frame, our unique amount of muscle. And once we can maintain that for a few months, I find the same thing happens.
Sweet.
And the body is much more likely to support ourselves in maintaining that.
Yeah.
But that being said, understanding this is an addiction recovery process, that relapses do happen.
Yeah.
They don't happen for everyone, but for some people they do. And there's no shame in that.
Mm-hmm.
There is no guilt whatsoever in that. It's just a part of the process for some people. And that just means there needs to be more practice.
Would you say also that it's a bit easier once you get to a point, it's easier to get back to the point versus
It
never
is.
getting there. So,
Yeah.
having that mentally in your mind, I
Yeah.
think could be, and you know what, now that it comes back to me, I think it was closer to 21 days, to be honest with you, somewhere up
Yeah.
in that factor, not that
That
short
makes
period of
sense to
time.
me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Well, this has been fantastic and some amazing nuggets out there for everybody that's listening. Would you mind? I know that I believe you have a free ebook, or is it not free?
Yeah.
Would you
It is.
mind talking about that? And we'll have the links in the show notes where you can go right to it. But would you mind explaining a little bit more about that and what they can
Sure.
expect?
Yeah, yep. You can download it on the website for free right now, and it's called The Ultimate Weight Loss Secrets. And I just talk a bit about the visceral fat and how it impacts the body. And then I offer some simple lifestyle strategies from nutrition, behavior, addiction recovery perspectives to really, I just wanted to be able to provide people with support and understand and help them understand that it's really not their fault. We've had so much shame and guilt associated with our weight when we really shouldn't, but we can overcome it if we want to. So I hope that the book offers some motivation and inspiration and is not overwhelming, just with some small steps that people can take to move themselves in the direction they want to go.
That's fantastic. Well, I can't thank you enough. Anything else that maybe you want to, give advice
Well, I
on or
love
kind of end
that.
with?
I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, we
I
did.
think it's great.
Perfect. And I honestly, I think I would love to do another episode where we dive into maybe a handful or more of research, some that is good, some that is not, and
That
kind of
would be
taking you
fun.
through that. I think it'd be fun, and we can kind of look
Yeah.
at that and find some hot topics. So, Dr. Ashley, I can't thank you.